Welcome to another edition of the Big Knick Energy Podcast. Make sure to like, share, subscribe, and comment everywhere you get your podcasts, including on YouTube, where we are almost at 1,000 subs, which most of that's happened in the past 6 months. It's amazing what effort will do. I have a great special guest today. I'm continuing with my Atlantic Division rivals, although I would say the Toronto Raptors are probably the least rivalry-ish of the Knicks Atlantic Division opponents. Imman Adan from Yahoo Sports Canada, and make sure to check out her new Substack, Prose and Claws, covering the Toronto Raptors. Imman, how you doing today?
Good. How are you?
I'm doing fantastic. So like I was saying prior to recording, I sent you a rundown, but the rundown does not include the most fun things that 22-year-old ex Twitter, whatever you want to call it's talking about right now for both of our teams. What is more likely to happen? And granted, neither one of these is going to most likely happen. But if you were to pick, what's more likely? Damian Lillard is a Raptor by the trade deadline this year, or Giannis Antetokounmpo is a Knick by August next year. And whichever one you pick, how do you get there?
Oh my goodness. Okay. I think, and this might be the homer, the bias in me right now, where I would pick Dame, and I'd start off by saying I think it's, for one, not a given that Giannis Antetokounmpo is not a Milwaukee Buck next season. Like, I just don't think it's a given that he gets moved, and I think it's a given that Dame gets moved. So automatically we're starting with Dame is more likely to be traded. And I think for the Raptors versus the Knicks are in a better spot than the Raptors. They're a young team. They're still growing. And there's just a lot of reasons for, obviously you trade for a superstar. If you have Giannis, if you have the ability to get Giannis, you give up anything that you can to get Giannis. You move mountains for him. But I think the Raptors are in a situation where it's more pressing for them to make a trade than it is for the Knicks right now. So for those two reasons, one, I think it's more pressing for the Raptors to make a trade, especially if they're looking to make a trade by the deadline. That means this season has not gone very well for them. And spoiler alert, I don't project it to go very well for the Raptors as it stands right now. So I think it's more pressing that they make a deal because Pascal Siakam will be an expiring if he doesn't sign an extension. No reason for him to right now. Same thing with OG Anunoby. If he doesn't sign an extension, no reason for him to right now. So they might be looking at, to make a Hail Mary move by the deadline because they've got two of their best players that are going to be unrestricted free agents. And we just saw what happened last season when they walked into the offseason with 3 unrestricted free agents. So all that to say, I think it's more likely that the Raptors make a deal for Dame.
For those of us that haven't been paying attention to the Dame Lillard thing since he announced that he wanted a trade and then his agent was like, it's either Miami or bust, there has been a lot of talk and a lot of come up recently for other teams to get involved. One of them being the Raptors. I know I heard the Celtics before, obviously the Lakers, Clippers, they always try to throw their head in something. But for the Raptors, when did the smoke start actually forming in the past 2 months, and why is this happening now?
Yeah, that's a good question. I'm going to be honest. For me, I was all in on this as soon as Dame said whatever he said. Like, as soon as July 1st rolled around, Raptors lose their only point guard. The only point guard on the entire roster.
We are going to get in Fred VanVleet, that's for sure.
Yeah. So they lose that, and they still, re-sign Jakob Poeltl. Of course, they don't have their pick next year. They want to win, and it's like, all right, well then you need a point guard, and here is one of the best ones in the league. Who I don't know if people really paid attention to Portland last year, but Dame just had his best season yet. Yep. We're not talking about a guy who's slowing down. We're talking about a guy who's coming off of his best season yet, and signed on for 4 years. To me, it was just like, as soon as that was announced, I'm like, yeah, you go all in and you make the moves to get Damian Lillard. And it seemed very slow. I was very confused at why the national media hadn't picked up on the Raptors as part of the talks. Like, I was just like, why are they not being mentioned at all?
I think part of it's what you just said. It's national media. Unfortunately, I mean, not unfortunately, but Toronto's part of Canada, and ESPN just doesn't get Canada ratings. TSN does.
That is true. I think the one where I was listening to the Low Post, who, if there's going to be an ESPN person who talks about the Toronto Raptors, it's going to be the person who spends his Christmas in Toronto every year. And that's Zach Lowe. Love Zach Lowe. And so I was just like, he mentioned, he's like, I don't see it for the Raptors. And that was like the one tidbit. And I was like, what? And that's where the article really came out of, because I see it for the Raptors. And here's why I see it for the Raptors. Again, I keep mentioning their best player is Pascal Siakam. He is going to be an unrestricted free agent. their next, like maybe the top, let's say the third, their second, I don't care how you sort of split hairs here, is OG Anunoby. Whatever it is, he matters and he's so integral to this team. He's also going to be an unrestricted free agent. And I get that the deal breaker, the move to get this done, if the Raptors want to blow any team making a trade out of the water and get this deal done, it's you trade Scottie Barnes. I've heard that from multiple people. It's just you trade Scottie Barnes, and that's going to be the deal that gets it done. And the Raptors, of course, are going to be reticent to do that because he is their future. He is sort of the linchpin. These guys are
it's the same thing with us as RJ Barrett.
Right, exactly. And especially because Pascal and OG are expiring. But here's where I come: your best player is 29 years old, and you don't know what Scottie Barnes is going to become. Do you run the risk of losing some more of your guys in unrestricted free agency for nothing? Because if they don't trade them right now, and even if they do trade them, they're going to get cents on the dollar because Pascal has said he's not going to sign anywhere that trades for him. So do you run the risk of losing Pascal and OG because you're not trying to make a win now move? And then what happens if the team that you do have doesn't pan out? Like, can you know that you'll build a team that has this many guys? For as bad as the Raptors are, they've got a lot of really good players. Yep. They just need a point guard. Like, they don't have a player to make it make sense. And I think the Knicks understand that, because look at how Jalen Brunson's arrival changed that team, right? Having a point guard matters. And so much. And so it's like the Raptors have a lot of really, really good and talented pieces. Do they run the risk of losing all of them because they're banking on this future that maybe doesn't, even if Scottie Barnes turns out to be as good as Pascal Siakam, or let's say as good as Damian Lillard, do you know that you'll have the pieces around him that you have right now that you can bring in with Dame? So I just think that, like, there's a lot more to gamble here for the Toronto Raptors. And that's the reason why I'm like, this isn't about trading Scottie Barnes and, oh no, what about your future? This is about banking on the fact that you have an all-NBA talent in Pascal right now, and you have a burgeoning star in OG Anunoby right now, and can you build around that team? So to me, it's just there's a lot more risk. There's a lot less risk, I think, involved in it. Or no, let me not phrase it that way. There's risk involved in it for trading Scottie Barnes, but there's also risk involved in it for not capitalizing on the window that you have now with Pascal Siakam. And I think a lot of people were underscoring the risk that the Raptors run by not trying to field a competitive team around Siakam, who's an all-NBA player.
Also, I think part of your issue, as you are aware, and anyone that watches the Raptors are aware at any given time, having a bunch of guys that are 6'8", 6'9", without having a real point guard, and then trying to, I don't know, from afar, it looks like a pigeonhole, honestly. You guys are trying to pigeonhole Scottie Barnes into becoming your point guard for some reason after you lost Kyle Lowry for cents on the dollar. You lost Fred VanVleet for literally nothing. I have two questions for you based on those things happening. One, what do you expect out of Scottie Barnes, the point guard? And is he actually going to go back to being a small forward in 2 to 3 years? And this is a failed experiment. And then I wanted to get into your GM, Masai Ujiri, after that. But just starting with the Scottie Barnes thing, where is Scottie Barnes as a point guard in 2025, for example?
That's a good question. I don't know. Only because, like, Scottie wants to be a point guard, right? Like, Scottie's Instagram bio says point guard. He came into the league wanting to be a point guard, and the Raptors have always really liked the idea of big wings who can facilitate. They love that idea. Giannis is a guy who, we talked about him, but Masai, clips have come out about this. Masai was actively trying to get into the lottery to get Giannis when he was drafted. Masai has ties with Giannis's family that date back to prior to Giannis being, in the NBA, because they both have, of course, Nigerian backgrounds. And so, like, there's strong ties there. Masai has said time and time again that Giannis is his guy. And without
Prose, your guys' name aren't coming up for all these rumors again, but Giannis throwing in the Lakers and Knicks, it's the ones that pop the top of the headlines, obviously.
Yeah, Giannis's name, like, Serge Ibaka had Giannis on his cooking show and asked it flat out. Like, this has been, the rumors have been there for a really long time, with Giannis and Toronto, specifically because of his connection to Masai Ujiri. And if you're a Raptor fan, the rumors are very loud, always. But so they've always loved the idea of a big wing. But even with Giannis, he needed to have an Eric Bledsoe or Drew Holiday next to him. You need to still have a primary ball handler. The Milwaukee Bucks tried Giannis at point guard. It did not work. They needed to have someone else there. He can still be your secondary playmaker. And I think we're going to see a similar thing with, we saw it with Ben Simmons as well. I think we're going to see a similar thing with Scottie Barnes. I think he's fine as a point guard. I think you can put the ball in his hands and get him to initiate offense. We also see it with Pascal Siakam. Big wings who can play make are great. You can see over the defense. It's a good idea to have your playmakers be tall. If you can do that, why not? If you can have every skill set and just make them all taller, you have the perfect basketball team. So try that with your playmakers as well. The only thing is, I think you need to have another guard, and I think we saw that as soon as Fred VanVleet left for nothing, and the Raptors did not expect that to happen.
I don't think anyone thought he was going to get $40 million a year. That honestly is unbelievable.
No one thought that Ime Udoka would land on Houston and change their sights from James Harden to Fred VanVleet for the same money. I don't think anyone predicted that. And so they didn't expect to lose Fred VanVleet for nothing. But Fred is sort of your ideally your typical fit around a guy like Giannis or Scottie. And I'm not saying that Giannis is Scottie. I'm not putting those expectations on Scottie Barnes, but the idea of a big wing who can play make. Because Fred VanVleet can be a secondary ball handler. We saw that with Kyle Lowry. He was your 2 when Kyle was your 1. So he played off ball really well. He's one of the best catch and shoot guys in the league. So there's lots of reasons to make sense, but you also need pull-up shooting from your guard spot. And so you also have him as a point guard who can pull up shoot. So that was sort of the idea behind this team. You lose Fred VanVleet and that kind of changes what this team looks like. And I think a lot of Raptor fans would say Scottie and Fred don't fit together and they'll have lots of issues with that. But on paper, that was sort of the logic behind those two together. But they brought Dennis Schroeder in right away. And the reason is they recognize the team desperately needs additional ball handlers and additional guards. And I think we're going to see Pascal handle a lot of those roles as well. And OG Anunoby wants to take a next step in handling those roles. So we'll probably see him. We'll see to what extent. But Scottie as your guard is going to be a big part of it. And it could work if you just have a ton of shooting around him. This is just not a team that's built to maximize either Scottie or Pascal's skill set as it stands right now.
Your current only projected starter to actually shoot over 35% is going to be your shooting guard, right? It's going to be Gary Trent Jr. if he starts still, and then everyone else is like 34, 33, 30, and Scottie's at 28.
OG,
so I mean,
Scotty's is
OG's at 40. My bad.
OG's a good 3-point shooter, and Gary, it's coming off of a bad year, but he's also a good shooter. He's your only like pull-up guy as well. He dropped in that last season, but yeah.
Can I throw in before you keep going? Can I throw in the Scottie Barnes numbers just so people know that are listening?
Yeah, please.
I was going to say your mic's on mute. Scottie Barnes. So last year he shot 28% from 3. He shot below 37% from the 16-foot to 3-point line and shot below 30% from 10 to 16 feet. He had a 12% turnover percentage, which people think Scottie is going to be and is a great ball handler. He is better than OG currently, but just to throw it out there, he had 12.0. OG's turnover percentage was 12.1. So the specific number itself isn't too far. And he had a 2.41 assist to turnover ratio, which was 66th in the league for qualified players. But he was 3rd on his own team behind both Fred VanVleet, who was at 3.5 and 11th overall, now gone. And Pascal was actually 57th, who also had a better assist to turnover percentage. So he's even still, he's not even considered the best playmaker on his team from just raw stats.
Right. And I think the idea is that Scottie Barnes in year 2 or Scottie Barnes in year 1 is not the idea of the Scottie Barnes that you're going to get in year 3. And also, I want to say, like, even with the OG and the Scottie numbers and the turnovers, this team I don't think is built. We just talked about with the lack of shooting to really maximize their skill set. Yeah, you need to have spacing around a guy like a Scottie Barnes or a guy like Pascal Siakam in order to maximize it. It's why what Siakam is doing right now is so incredibly special, and I don't think people are recognizing how good it is because he's doing it in negative spacing. He's doing it in the least. I don't know if there's another team that's as bad shooting as the Raptors can get. There's streaks where it's just like, oh my goodness, you can put up 5 guys, and they often do, who are well below average shooters, and their starting lineup next season might only have 1 3-point shooter, one above league average 3-point shooter. It's a pretty bad team in terms of spacing. And so, you're going to get a lot of turnovers. This team also gets out and runs in transition a lot. And Scottie might be a little sloppy with the ball sometimes, but I think you expect that to sort of take the next step. I'm not too worried about that, just because I think the build of the team needs to change in order to maximize what you have there. But the shooting, of course, is an issue.
To throw in a couple Knicks, just for the sake of the Knicks podcast part, Brunson was 21st with a 2.9 ratio. Deuce McBride was 22nd, who I'm actually surprised even qualified on this list. Also a 2.9 ratio, but he had less than 100 assists in the year, so whatever with that. Quickly was 37th with a 2.6, and Josh Hart was 78th with a 2.3. So the Knicks currently still have 4 players on their team that had really good assist turnover numbers. Now the Raptors only have 2. I didn't look if Schroeder was actually on the list. He probably was if I remembered to look. But
Right.
speaking of Dennis Schroeder and the fact that you have him and Gary Trent Jr., which one of them is more likely to start with this lineup currently going into your season?
Yeah, that's the age-old question right now. Dennis Schroeder is a Raptor because of Darko Rajakovic, right? So, and he's talked about this, and it seems that, you know, he believes that he's going to start. This is like
I mean, after his FIBA, it's kind of hard to even tell him no, right?
FIBA MVP. I mean, but also that FIBA and that team, that Germany team, had a lot more shooters around him
So
than
much
this
spacing.
Raptors team is going to have.
Daniel Tice of the 5 helps a lot.
It does, certainly. And so, like, we're talking about a different team than, like, you know, than what you have to maximize Dennis Schroeder's skill set as well. So it'll be really interesting to see what the Raptors do, because I think they might just need Gary shooting, but they also depends on, I think every question that you ask me can just be boiled down to what leap does Scottie take? Because I think if you can trust the ball in Scottie's hands, then you're fine with Dennis Schroeder coming in as your 6th guard. He kind of changes the pace a little bit, gets you the paint touches that you're going to need, gets, you know, just changes the sort of look of this Raptors team, which you want your second unit to be able to do. But if you need to have a ball handler in your starting lineup, if Scottie has not taken that leap there, then I think you start Dennis Schroeder and Gary Trent Jr. comes off the bench for the spacing there. So really depends on what he looks like. I don't think you can answer any Raptor question without that.
I would say at least then for the first 15 games, which usually 15, 20 games is what coaches give as like a tryout. Who do you expect to be the starter and closer out of the Gary Trent and Dennis Schroeder combo?
This is really funny because I had it as Gary. And then I was like, I think you're going to need in the first 15 games. I think you're going to need a ball handler. And I was like, it's got to be Schroeder. And then yesterday I was doing the pod and I was like, nope, you need shooting. It's going to be Gary. So I've gone back and forth on this a ton. I think that it's probably going to be Dennis, though. I think that's where I settle on it right now. But tomorrow I might tell you something different. But I think where I settle on it right now, I think you need Dennis. And I think because this team does not work if Pascal doesn't have, like, Pascal shooting splits, and you can go through the entire team. He was a 37% catch and shoot guy at the beginning of the season, pre All-Star, which is not the beginning. That's like 2/3 of the season. Right. 37% catch and shoot 3-pointer, catch and shoot. I can't speak English. And then post All-Star, post All-Star, it went down to 28%. Right. So on catch and shoot,
37% isn't even that great for someone like Pascal. No. You'd expect it to be higher already.
You would expect it to be higher, but then it goes down to 28%. And part of that, a large part of all of these splits for all of these guys across the board, is the fact that they all played 41 minutes or something crazy. Pascal led the league in minutes. I think it was 37 to 38 minutes last season. He's led the league in minutes the last 2 years.
Even if you didn't say that, I would have guessed it was because Jakob Poeltl then being at the 5 prevents spacing. Pascal was playing the 5 for so long for you guys, and Pascal being a +5 defender was honestly unbelievable for a short time. But I think the minutes and the size honestly wore on him over the year.
And that's exactly it. Like, having to sort of play your nominal 5 takes a toll on your body. It makes sense that the Raptors defensively had to bring in Jakob Poeltl. The offense wasn't, I mean, the offense was fine in that you had a set play that you can run that they don't have anymore, which was a pick and roll between Fred VanVleet and Jakob Poeltl, which now that you don't have a pick and roll ball handler, Dennis Schroeder is that, but you need pull-up shooting. You can't just have,
they can sag off him.
Exactly. You lose that, but the defense, when you had Jakob Poeltl come in, because you're not overtaxing OG Anunoby and Pascal Siakam, went up to top 6, I think it was, with Jakob Poeltl in the starting lineup. So the defense was much better, but the offense is going to have some issues. And I think this season you can predict that the Raptors are going to be a good defensive team, but be a bad offensive team.
That's fair. That is fair. Which honestly, I think the Raptors are the total antithesis of the Knicks. You guys have, I think 9 wings I counted when I went through your 12 people I expect to get playing time, and the Knicks
we copied
legitimately have 1. RJ Barrett's the only wing we have.
Yeah, that's true. It's true.
It's crazy. I wanted to ask you a question about Pascal Siakam and bring in Julius Randle into this, because obviously the offseason you bring in lists. They're like, oh my God, outrage, yada, yada, yada. So one of them has been a 2-time All-Star, 2-time All-NBA player in the past 3 years. The other one only made 1.
Yeah.
The one that has 1 of each was ranked 3rd on a list by Hoops Hype as the 3rd best power forward going into next season. The one that has 2, which granted, the guy that has 2 has significantly less playoff experience and success, which is the main catalyst to how he probably dropped so low.
Yeah.
But is Pascal Siakam the 3rd best power forward? And is Julius Randle really the 11th best power forward for the 2023-2024 season?
I'm going to be honest. I hate lists like this. I think it's such cheap ploy for engagement every time it comes out, but it works.
It's September, girl. I mean, we're talking about it. There's nothing to talk about.
It's true. No, that's valid. Here's what I think. When it comes down to it, and as Raptor fans, we have like, it's surprising to see Pascal as high as it is, because for year in and year out, it's like DeMar should be ranked higher than this person and that person, and it's all we've been yelling about for years. But I think when it comes down to it, 3rd and 11 sound like a bigger gap, but it's probably like we're like, I don't know, who's 4th, like probably Cat or Zion.
So I have the whole list. I'll tell you the whole thing. So it goes Giannis first, which honestly he's the 2nd best player in the league.
How dare he be ranked higher than Pascal?
I know, right? Anthony Davis, who also helped win a title more recently and helped his team get to the Western Conference Finals. Outrageous. Pascal, and then I start having some problems. So we got Zion 4th. I think you have to play some games, first of all. Cat 5th, who is a better center than power forward just from a spacing and size standpoint. I know he can't play center defensively, but like he can't cover anyone defensively. If Cat's scoring 25, he's giving up 24. Am I wrong?
Yeah, I don't love the idea of, like, I said it, I was like, it's probably going to be Cat. I also just like have questions about that Minnesota team. Okay, I don't love that one. And with Zion, yeah, I guess we're projecting what he'll be in this season, but we don't have anything to base that.
Zion can be as high as 2nd. Honestly, he can be better than AD.
Zion could be 1st. He can, like, I don't know what Zion.
I don't think he passed Giannis this year, but maybe.
Hey, if
he could be as low as like 25th.
Yeah. If he doesn't play at all, sure, yeah.
Then we got Triple J, who also is more or less a 5, but with Steven Adams coming back, I understand the concept of him being a 4, defensive player of the year. I get the whole thing. Paolo Banchero, which I think 2 to 3 years from now, I probably agree with. He'll be better than Julius, but I don't think he's there yet.
That's a surprise, yeah.
Yeah, he's 7th. Lauri Markkanen, which really could kind of go either way. Evan Mobley, who we literally just watched the Knicks overall destroy the Cavaliers. I know that's a lot of projection right there, because Mobley did shut down Randle.
I was gonna say, okay.
But he also got punked. It was also 2-on-1 offensive boards, and Mitch Robinson punked him and Al at the same time. Like, how good of a player are you?
That's true.
And then we have the most painful 10th is Kristaps Porzingis, which as a Knick fan hurts right in the soul, honestly. Talking about another dude that doesn't even play all the games. I know he played the most games he's played since his rookie year last year.
Good year, yeah.
He's also coming in with plantar fasciitis.
That is true.
Like, oh my God. And as every year gets older, his 7'3" frame becomes like, oh, well, maybe I'm 7'2" this year. My leg hurts. My back hurts. I can't play all the games. And I don't know. For him to be 11th, like these are all phenomenal, great players. The power forward position is one of the deepest positions in the NBA right now.
Yeah.
Just between the ones that bothered me the most were Paolo, Mobley, and Kristaps, honestly.
And that's fair. That's fair. I wouldn't mind. Like, I have nothing with Julius being ahead. Actually, you know what? I probably would have ranked. I would have to, because like if the idea is it's a knock on Julius Randle because of his playoff performances, okay, well, Lauri didn't make it. And
neither did Paolo.
Didn't make it. Yeah, I'm saying Lauri didn't make it. Paolo didn't make it. Like, and Evan Mobley, yeah, sure, defensively he was fine, but we also, you're right, Mitchell Robinson did punk him.
Yeah.
So yeah, I would have zero issues with that. I think that, like, again, I think I've just expended too much energy hating these lists during my DeMar DeRozan and Kyle Lowry years, where now I'm like,
that's fair.
Oh, you have Pascal high? Okay, cool.
Yeah, it's almost a shock when your player's actually that high up.
Yeah. And here's the thing: I think Pascal Siakam is one of the more underrated, which is why it's always surprising to see this players in the league. Just because, again, this is a team that is built with, and I hate to say redundancy because I don't know that their skill sets are necessarily redundant, but Dan Favale put this properly. I butchered his last name. That it's like
Dan was on with me a month ago, by the way, and then I saw you were on with him 2 days ago. So Dan, if you're listening, I asked her a week ago. I'm not copying you.
And I think truly it's like a redundancy of weaknesses. I think that's accurate. It is very similarly skilled sized players, I should say. And so like Pascal's really doing this and not on a team that is meant to maximize his skill set at all. And so it's always surprising that he's been able to do this with such little care or thought put into his build and trying to maximize that, in my opinion.
And also playing the wrong position half the time. I feel like there's no reason Pascal should be playing the 5.
That's what I mean. But like, this is not a team that was built with him in mind.
No.
And yet still he's been able to do what he's been able to do. And I just think that like it's special.
So because I'm in a thread, obviously, like Knicks fans listen to this, I'm in a thread with a bunch of Knicks fans. Can you just explain really quickly before we get off Pascal altogether, why is Pascal Siakam seen better as Julius Randle overall to the NBA as a whole? Is it as simple
You're gonna
as
get me, hate me. I think, yeah, that's number one. I think he's just a better. I like Julius Randle. Julius Randle's a better 3-point shooter. I think defense becomes a big one, but I also just think that like, he's a better playmaker. I think that he's a better defender. I think he's probably a better ball handler. I just think he's like kind of a better player. And I also think that like playoffs matter a ton. And like, yes, we've seen Pascal struggle in the bubble and that's kind of haunted him. That one playoff has haunted him, but we also seen him win a championship as the second offensive scorer or the second leading scorer on a team. That's huge. And I don't think that can be discounted. And also like he's had playoff rebounds since the bubble. It's just everyone goes back to the bubble for whatever reason. When I really want to like, not to just give him too many excuses, but I'm going to throw a huge one in here. Canada had like Ontario had the biggest shutdowns in the world. And so this is a guy who could not practice in any gym, not in his house gym. He did not touch a basketball for 4 months. There was no training at all. And I don't think people recognize that, where a lot of like the Americans who are Raptors could just go back to America and it was fine. But the players who are not American citizens could not just go back to America. They had to stay in Ontario, where not allowed to touch a basketball, not allowed to train. Like they live in condos. What is he going to do? Dribble in his condo and disturb his neighbors downstairs? Like there was no training. You can't work out in your condo gym either. Raptors practice facility had to be closed. They did not open it for anyone. So for 4 months, he did not train with any member of the Raptors staff, did not touch a basketball, and he's also coming off of a major groin injury. So yeah, he had a bad bubble. Like that was sort of bound to happen. I think if you put any player in under those circumstances, the same thing would probably happen to them.
Probably. I'm not, I have no rebuttal to that, honestly. Stats are the stats and numbers are the numbers, but if a guy didn't practice for 4 months, I mean, what do you really expect?
And coming off of a major injury, as could not train with anybody to rehab properly with that because the lockdowns were as strict as they were in Ontario. Insane.
Yeah. Imman, my favorite player on the team is OG Anunoby. I actually think OG is one of my favorite players in the whole league, and he has been for a little while. And I get into fights all the time that OG Anunoby is like up here skill level and ability wise and being the best, one of the 2 best defenders in the whole league. And RJ Barrett's like down here. And I get into a lot of fights with a lot of angry Knicks fans because they don't watch OG Anunoby. They don't understand how good he is. And that part of his problem with driving and all, they see the once in a while, like B-ball index numbers, like, look at his turnover rate, man. Look at him driving. Like he is the main spacer on his team. If he's the one driving the ball, he doesn't get the space to drive. I don't know how hard that is to really figure out, but can I give you a runway to explain how good OG Anunoby is to Knicks fans and where he would rank both if he was just put on the Knicks, same roster, both offensively and defensively, where would he be in the Knicks rotation?
That's a good question. Okay, so here's the thing. I love OG Anunoby too. He'd be the best defender on the team. Straight up. I would say that about any
team.
Quentin
Grimes. Sorry, Mitchell Robinson.
Sorry, Quentin Grimes. Sorry, Mitchell Robinson. I would say that about any team. He's also like, if you're going to be on Basketball Index, look at their defensive versatility metrics, because you're going to find OG on pretty high on very many of them. He is one of the most defensively versatile players in basketball. You talk about Pascal playing the 5. Well, who's the guy who had to guard a lot of those 5s? A lot of that is OG Anunoby. I mean, one of my favorite games was him going up against Nikola Jokic. This is about a season and a half ago, I want to say at this point. He's a guy who can go up against centers like that. And you know, just absolutely guard anybody, the best player on any team, whether it's a wing guy, whether he's your best point of attack defender, he's your best perimeter defender.
This dude will cover Nikola Jokic and Steph Curry in back-to-back games. I'm just that insane.
I think that was actually I think it was Denver. It was the Western Conference road trip, and I think it was Denver and then Golden State right after. Golden State first and Denver. And like, that's what he is. He's your best point of attack defender, perimeter defender, and rim protector all in one. He's also the team's best 3-point shooter. He has, you look at any corner 3-point metric, he's going to be at the top there with Mikal Bridges and Reggie Bullock. Like, it's just going to be one of the three there at the top. He is the team's best 3-point shooter. And unfortunately for the Raptors, again, we're talking about maximizing these guys' skill sets, because he is one of the only 3-point shooters on the team. He's been relegated to really sort of standing around in the corners as opposed to having the ball and trying to see things. That's why, trying to see what he does. That's why you're hearing reports so often about him wanting a bigger role, is because he doesn't want to just stand in the corner to let Pascal or whoever else go and do things because he believes he can do it. But unfortunately, again, you put the ball in his hands, he's working in absolutely no spacing, and it's going to be a turnover. He's a little strong, I will say. His handle could use a little bit more work. So he is turnover prone that way, and he is strong. I think that, like, he gets inside, he gets down the middle, and it's quite often called a charge because he's bigger than whoever is going up against him. So there's a little bit of that where he has to understand a little bit more of control, but I think he's improved as a post player. We also saw him improve as a mid-range guy towards the second half of last season, and I'd love to see OG with the ball in his hands and trying to do more. I think that would be something the Raptors really need to take. I think they need to prioritize a little bit more, because I think it's time for OG. He's just turned 26, so this is sort of the time to watch it happen. Where he would slot, I think he would be the best defender. I think the Knicks have better self-creators than OG Anunoby.
I would argue Jalen Brunson's the best out of both teams, honestly.
Yes.
Yeah.
I wouldn't disagree. Raptors need a point guard.
Dennis Schroeder.
Oh, yeah. It would, like, bring Franz and then bring in your other shooters around with you, please. So I would think that, like, he would be pretty high up on the list, to be honest, but because I have not seen that self-creation out of him, I don't know how much I can sort of rank him above, a Julius Randle or anything like that. I wouldn't do that. Right. I would have him above RJ Barrett. Yes. I watched a lot of FIBA, Canadian guys, shout outs to Mississauga, but no, I think OG Anunoby's a better player than him. I think they both sort of run into the same things where they're bigger than any guy that they go up against. And so sometimes that whistle needs to, I think RJ's better though at just sort of bullying guys down low and getting the call as opposed to being the person who gets it called on them, which is something OG needs to improve at.
I think part of RJ's benefit though is that he's had that runway his whole career. He is shorter and stronger. So I mean, it's built more better that way.
Yeah.
OG's what, 6'8" and like 210. RJ's what, 6'6" and 220. Like there's a size difference there that you have an advantage over.
Right. So I think I would put him higher than anyone defensively, but I think offensively he's a few rungs down some people just as of right now because we have not seen it. But I don't know that that's a skill set issue with OG Anunoby. It might just be an opportunity issue with him. And as soon as he gets that, we're talking about him in a completely different light.
I actually had the next question written, and I didn't even in my head, if I didn't have it written, I was like going to ask this anyway. So you're a Raptors fan. You've been watching them for, I don't know how old you are, but I'm going to say 20, 25 years, 30 years, your whole life. How much longer do you want to watch the Raptors trot out Scottie Barnes, Pascal Siakam, and OG Anunoby in the same lineup on the same team?
Funny, because I've been talking about how badly built this team is, but at the same time, I think there's been, so the Raptors won 41 games last year, and the sky is falling to the fan base. I'm not going to separate myself from that. The sky was falling to me too. 41 wins, disastrous as a Raptor fan.
You're used to getting 48 to 50 every year. I mean, that is bad.
Above 50, almost every single season. The Raptors were the winningest team since Masai Ujiri has taken over. The winningest team in the Eastern Conference. I think only the Warriors have won more than them since Masai Ujiri has taken over.
That's right. You guys had a bunch of 1 and 2 seeds and just lost to LeBron. I forgot all about that.
Just lose to LeBron every single season. But 56 wins, 59 wins, 58 wins, just time and time again. And so, and even last season without Kyle Lowry, they were a 48-win team. And they were a 48-win team when you're talking about Pascal Siakam missing a big chunk of the early part of the season because of a growing injury. Scottie Barnes, are working a rookie into the fold and into the fray. You don't have a center. And still, they were a 48-win team. I think they were top 3 defense from January 1st onwards. They just looked like a good team, and there was reason to believe that they could be built up. But then what you don't see. So I think like 41 wins were just like, you won 48 the year before and you were on the up and up. What happened? And what happened was there was a regression shooting wise from everybody across the board, namely Fred VanVleet, because he is your best shooter. I think you took about 10 threes a game in that 2021 season and shot 40%. Like, he is your best shooter, and he did a great job of that when he was an all-star that season. And then last year it was like 35% or 34%. It was disgusting. And the team just looked really bad, but also Gary shot went down, Precious Achua's efficiency went down, Scottie Barnes' efficiency went down, Pascal Siakam's, across the board, every single person. And so this team with those three at the helm, it's only been 2 seasons. One, I think, was pretty good, and the second was bad. And I think it was the floor, and the floor was 41 wins, except this season, I think the floor just dropped. Because you don't have Fred VanVleet. For as much as Raptor fans don't like him, I think the floor just dropped because you need, even if Fred's efficiency went down last season, and it did substantially, teams have to guard him out there. Like, you have to trust. The Raptors won a championship on the backs of Fred VanVleet having a son and going absolutely lights out against the Milwaukee Bucks, right? Like, you have to guard him out there, which is a lesson Milwaukee did not learn, but thank you for the championship. So I think that, like, the floor has just dropped for the Raptors. But again, like, I think there's like so much angst from the fan base. All this to say, like, there's so much angst from this fan base about what this sort of 3 guys look like. And I think it can work, because I think you can have, if you're building around Pascal, just a ton of shooting around him. If you're building around Scottie, just a ton of shooting around him. OG, I don't have to mention him because he is shooting. Like, he's not an issue. You can sort of slot him in.
He is the space the rest of your team needs.
Exactly. Like, if more guys could just do what he was doing, we'd all be fine. And I think you can build a team with Pascal and Scottie and just a ton of shooting around them. The only problem is they have not done that. There is no shooting around them. So I think it can work. I think you can find ways that it can work. I'm not totally against it, but again, and I said this earlier, every question comes down to, or the answer to every question comes down to, what step does Scottie take? Because if Scottie does not take that leap and it's still more of a project, then I'm done watching this trio together. I think you trade Pascal and you double down on the Scottie timeline, or you trade Scottie and you double down on your Pascal timeline. But the answer to that question is, what does Scottie look like going into this season? Because you know what you're going to get from Pascal and you know what you're going to get from OG. You just don't know what that third part looks like.
If you were to put a percentage on it, this time next year, what percentage is that all 3 of them are there, and what percentage is it that you think 2 of them are there?
I think it's much higher that 2 of them are there. I think that, and I think this is probably going to surprise a lot of people, but I would say that OG is probably the piece that gets traded.
That's not surprising to our fan base. We've been pining for OG since he went to CAA.
And hey, that's fair. OG's a really good basketball player. The reason why I say, I think it surprised a lot of Raptor fans, because OG is much closer. He's the guy who fits in both of their timelines, right? So, like, whether you're keeping Pascal or you're keeping Scottie, you keep OG because he's a great player. You're not going to find an improvement on him defensively, and also, he's not just a 3-and-D guy. I keep talking about the threes and the defense, but he does so much more than just that, and that's very rare in the league.
He's one of the best cutters in the league.
He's a great cutter. Yeah. He does so much more than just that. So to find someone who is an elite 3-and-D guy, who can also post up, who's also a good cutter, who can do more of the things and wants the ball in his hands and has sort of worked at creating for himself as well. I hate the idea of trading OG Anunoby. I just think we get to a point where OG Anunoby becomes too expensive to keep. And I think that that's sort of the decision that has to be made. I would have to imagine that they try to re-sign Pascal, regardless of what happens this year. Maybe trade OG at some point if things don't work out. If we're talking about this Raptors team and it's closer to the trade deadline and things are all bad, which I don't have very much optimism around this team, to be completely honest, I think OG becomes your trade bait, and I think you re-sign Pascal, and then if you have to flip him next season, you flip him next season, but you're going to try to maximize your return for a guy like Pascal Siakam. And the best way to do that is to sign him on long term and then trade him after that, as opposed to trading him when he has like 2 months left on his deal.
Right. That makes sense. If you were to, so I want to say your starting lineup and your bench currently, and then I'm going to also mention, just for everyone listening, all of the players between 6'7" and 6'9", because for anyone that doesn't really know, it is a little comical. Yeah. So the projected starting lineup that I wrote, I had Gary Trent, not Schroeder. So
that's fine. Yeah.
Scottie Barnes, who has a star. Gary Trent, OG Anunoby, also fits. Pascal Siakam also fits. Jakob Poeltl doesn't fit. So that's 3 out of 5. And then your bench, who I know you guys have a couple, like the 14, 15 slots, and then a couple other guys fighting for the last spots, but So Dennis Schroeder, Grady Dick, who you just drafted, also fits. Otto Porter also fits. Christian Coloco, Precious Achiuwa also fits. Jalen McDaniel also fits. Chris Boucher also fits. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7.
Thaddeus Young also fits.
I didn't put Thad because I've thought him in the 14th, 15th spot out of all the people. Like Thad, like Malachi Flynn. It's like those are the guys that are like.
I was thinking like Malachi Flynn, Marquise Noel. Those are probably your end of the bench guys.
If Marquise Noel was 5 inches taller, he would solve all of your point guard problems.
Oh my gosh, yeah.
Although he wouldn't have gone in the second round. So, or did he get drafted? Or you guys undrafted him or second round?
Undrafted. Was he?
He would have been a first round pick if he was 6'1".
Hey.
However, he ends up on the team, right? I mean, Nate Robinson and Isaiah Thomas both made do with being very short.
That is true.
So I wanted to ask you, to go into that with Grady Dick, what was the funniest thing about drafting Grady Dick you saw online, whether it was his name, his draft day outfit, or anything relating to his family?
So here's the thing, because like, as I said, the Raptors winning his team, very few seasons below 50 wins, like very few seasons below. I think there was one season below 49 wins, maybe.
Your over-under now is 36.5 with action on the under, by the way. It is pretty insane to see the downfall.
Here's where, I know. And like, so 41 wins was disastrous for this fan base. It was like, what? You win as many as you lose? What? Who does that? Very foreign, which is very funny because before Masai Ujiri came, 41 wins, we'd be popping champagne.
Yeah.
So I think that like, the vibes were terrible, and then Grady Dick gets drafted, and I don't know if it was the red suit, I don't know if it was he can shoot, which is not a Masai calling card of the type of player that he can draft. It's like very different than what you would expect Masai Ujiri to draft, but the vibes changed immediately. And the funniest means, honestly, the fact that he was at Caravana was really funny. I don't know if you guys are familiar with Caravana, but it's like, you know, a Caribbean festival that happens in Toronto. And you've got a bunch of people in like these gorgeous island costume, like these outfits that are like beautiful and gorgeous, and everyone's dancing and soca music's playing, and it's just like this, you know, Toronto has a really big West Indian population, and so you're seeing all of that and just watching Grady Dick just kind of stroll through. It was all really, really funny. All the photos from that.
Also being 6'8", he's sticking out.
He's sticking out. He's sticking out. Yeah. There's like also probably you know, for one of the first times in his life, a visible minority in a crowd as well. Yeah. So there are lots of reasons why he's sticking out, but it was great to watch him just sort of be there and embrace the culture of Toronto. It was fun. It was fun. Those were my favorite videos and clips of him. And
then what is your, do you gamble or no?
I don't.
Probably for the best.
Yeah. Oh my God, yeah. I was like, I did this gambling hit last season, and I'm like, hit the over on the Raptors. They've not hit the under in 10 seasons. In 10 seasons outside of Tampa, which we toss away, that doesn't exist. That never happened. With Tampa, they practice in a ballroom. Yeah. Everyone was living in it out of an Airbnb. Kids who had players who had families didn't know what to do with their kids and where to enroll them. It was a disastrous mess of a season. So like toss that one away. I'm like, they've hit the over every single year. There is no reason to believe they'll hit the under. I don't know of a time where they've hit the under, and they hit the under pretty hard on that one. So that wasn't great. So that was my foray into gambling, and yeah, that's it.
Well, here, storyline wise, the sky is falling. You actually end up below 36.5 wins this year. How does that happen? That I'm assuming at least one or two of the three guys get traded.
Yeah, I think Pascal at the very least gets traded. I don't think you have a Pascal run team that's that bad. I think we saw again the floor of when he's the leader of your team. 36 wins just feels very bad. Especially because the East is in flux. I don't think the East is as strong as it has been. I think there are a lot of question marks around the league. So I think Pascal gets traded, and injuries might also come into play, but at very least Pascal gets traded, if not both Pascal and OG Anunoby. But also if the Raptors get down to that point, I think they go down much below 36. I don't, because they lose their pick
right
this season anyway. And so like things have to go.
Thank God you got Yahoo though, you know?
Hey, and like if they had kept Fred, if they had, you know, tried to do these things, I was on board with trading for Jakob Poeltl. But if they don't plan on building around Pascal, then you go down, and it's fine. You just say, okay, we lost a pick for a year. Let's go back. We have all of our future picks moving forward. But if you can keep Pascal Siakam, and you get that bad, I think it has to do with injuries, which they happen.
Right. And they sometimes bank those in, they sometimes don't. So, and honestly, your team, like you said, they've led the league in minutes so many times. Like a lot of the players Pascal did, obviously, Fred VanVleet has before. They're just like really high up there. Now one of them's gone, obviously. But Pascal almost never gets hurt. So I don't know if they would really, they're probably banking on a trade.
He's had some pretty bad groin injuries that has sidelined him. I would think
That's
think
what, twice
trade,
in the last 4 years, though. It's like every other year, it seems
he
like.
missed time last season. He missed time the season before because of the surgery. And then Tampa I disregard. So that happened. Okay. That was 2 seasons ago. So for me, it's like 3 of the last 3 years, but there was a full year in there that I've just ignored. But yeah, so but the last 2 seasons he's missed some time, and groin came up last season and surgery the season before. But I personally, and OG has missed a lot of time. OG injuries follow him, and that's kind of the biggest knock. Yeah, that's kind of the biggest knock on OG Anunoby. But well, sorry, what was? I'm just thinking about injuries right now.
No, it's okay. I don't want to. I was just saying, how would they get to under 36.5? But it sounds like it's either injuries or they trade Pascal.
I think a trade is way more likely. I think that is what Vegas is banking on right now. I think a trade is way more likely. I said this before, Masai Ujiri very rarely believes in trading midseason. He looks at, he says, 29 teams are losers at the end of the year. And so 29 teams recognize that they need to make an upgrade. And so that's when if you're going to be a seller, that's when you try to make those seller moves. The times that he has made midseason trades, it's to improve the team. Like you're trading Giannis Valanciunas for Marc Gasol. The one time that he made one to tear the team down, outside of course, like Knicks fans know what happened with like Carmelo, but the one time like that was in the offseason? That was
Bargnani?
Right.
It was offseason.
Yeah, but no, I was saying like when he was in Denver, the Melo deal was that.
Oh, that was midseason.
That was midseason, right? I was gonna say like the one time was like when he
could have been a free agent if we just waited the 5 months.
That's what I thought.
Yeah.
Wow.
He might have gone to the Nets. That was the thing. He might have gone to the.
That was and that's what Masai does. He tries to create leverage out of nothing, and his whole idea, his whole belief.
He was good at that up until recently. It seems like
he was like, I here's the thing. I'm defending him a little too much because I said like losing Fred VanVleet for nothing, garbage, terrible, bad. That's when we can start to like wave our fists at him. I think Kyle Lowry is a little bit overblown. Kyle Lowry is the greatest Raptor in franchise history. Kyle Lowry is what changed this team. If we're talking about Masai coming in and being the winningest team, it's because Kyle Lowry was the point guard. It's because this team recognized you need a Nova guard. You guys recognize that now too. Yeah. So a bit about those Nova guards. But Kyle was the sort of linchpin of this team, and you do him a favor. He did not want to get traded midseason and uproot his family in the middle of a pandemic midseason. His kids enrolled in school and all of that. And he wanted to go to Miami. And so it's like, all right, well, let's just do that because the offers are not blowing us out of the park, and Masai is a really big Precious Achiuwa guy. So to me, that was just a favor to a guy, and I'm fine with that. But Fred VanVleet is when it's like, Masai, what are you doing? Outside, like, how did we allow this? How did this happen? And granted, again, no one could have predicted it. But that's the sort of one instance where I would really say that Masai blew it in terms of overvaluing his talent and not creating leverage. Outside of that, I think that's a little bit of an overblown narrative because I don't know, we don't want to trade OG Anunoby for scraps, and if they lose OG, then that narrative can continue. But if they don't, then what are we doing?
If say you were Masai, I know Masai's been looking for like 3 first-round picks for OG, and he has since I think said he got offered it last year. A couple of them were protected. He just said no from Indiana, if I'm not mistaken. If you were Masai Ujiri, what would you expect to get for OG Anunoby? Now that he's on his contract year too, so it's not like a year ago.
Yeah, I think the equation definitely changes. I think so much, and I keep coming back to it, and it sucks because it's not great podcast fodder for the off season. But that answer also comes down to, what does Scottie Barnes look like? Right. Because if Scottie Barnes has taken that next leap, why are you trading OG Anunoby? Like, he's the perfect player. You're competing for the playoffs, and you need to have a good team that you're building around Scottie Barnes. Why are you giving up on OG Anunoby, even if this season isn't going to be your year? You're building towards something, and OG's young enough. So much of this comes down to, what does Scottie Barnes look like? And in my opinion, and this is going to be a very rare one from Raptor fans, if Scottie Barnes doesn't take that leap, I think we're talking about trading Scottie Barnes for something if you can try to get something and build around Pascal and OG Anunoby. Again, why are you trading OG? So my whole thing is like,
That's wild.
Why do this? Why do this? Build around Pascal Siakam. You have someone now, and OG is a perfect fit around him. So that would be my thing. I think I'm in the minority, but I just think Pascal Siakam is a really good player, and OG is a really good player. And if Scottie's not panning out to be that star level player, all right.
I have one question for you based on that, and I want to do our game real quick before we go because Ben has to leave around 4 o'clock, I believe.
Yeah.
So real quick, based on that, if Scottie Barnes was to get traded, what position is he playing on his next team?
Well, see, Portland needs. No, I'm joking. What position?
They don't need a point guard. They have Scoot Henderson. So
yeah, no, I'm saying Portland needs a big. I think it's probably a big playmaking wing, like a small forward, power forward, like just a big wing. I think a power forward would probably be it. Yeah, I would probably slot him in as a power forward.
What his shooting splits and his very young body is probably bound to build into anyway. So maybe he'll actually play what he's supposed to play. I personally don't think Scottie Barnes is going to be a point guard at any point in his career, like a real over the top, like top 10 point guard. Maybe he could be serviceable, but that's just me.
Yeah, and here I'm always of the belief of like, and maybe the Raptors have kind of shaken my belief on this a little bit because they clearly believed it very strongly and it did not pan out. That like positions are like I'm like, he's a big wing who can create and for himself and for others. You can put the ball in his hands, but he doesn't need to be your point guard. He's can play alongside a point. Exactly. He doesn't need to be your primary ball handler. He can be your secondary ball handler. Like you can have sort of, as long as the guy next to him is a good pull-up shooter and he is a good catch and shoot guy, then I think that's fine.
That's fair. All right. So are you ready for the game?
Let's go.
All right, so I sent you, if you were to make a 10-man rotation out of both the Knicks and the Raptors rosters, like it's the all-star game. First, what would your starting lineup be? So we'll just start with that. Who would be the first 5 coming off the Knicks Raptors conglomerate roster?
Oh God, Knicks fans. I'm sorry. We've talked a lot about OG Anunoby, Scottie Barnes, and Pascal Siakam, and now you're gonna see my bias shine through. Maybe I make a trade. Okay, so I'll tell you what I initially had.
Okay.
What I initially had is those 3. And then Mitchell Robinson and Jalen Brunson.
Okay.
But I think I'm fine with just being like, all right, Scottie, if he does not take that leap, then like, and where we're standing right now, I'll start Julius Randle and I'll bring Scottie off the bench. Because I think those other 5, I think that works. But I'm fine with either or.
Because I think Pascal can cover 3. Randle can't, obviously, but Pascal can cover 3. So you could do.
Yeah, Pascal's your 3.
Brunson, OG, Siakam, Randle, yes, Mitch, and your. Okay.
Randle would be your 4, and Pascal gets slotted down to a 3. Because for the Raptors,
you changing it to that was my 5, by the way.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah.
Yeah, I had it as Scottie because, I'm a Raptor fan.
That's fair.
And my brain is like, all three of them, of course. Why would I separate them? And now, as we're talking, I'm like, oh, did I just ignore Julius Randle? Yes, I did. Yeah, no, Julius Randle gets the nod. He's the 4, and Siakam goes to your 3.
So then who are the first 5? Who are the 5 off the bench? I'm not going to make you do all 15 players, but who's the next 5?
Yeah, who are your third stringers?
Yeah.
So the next 5
I got Malachi Flynn,
Emmanuel Quickley, who I absolutely love. And I had it. Hold on, let me pull up my phone.
It's okay. While you are looking, so okay, go ahead.
Oh, I was just gonna say Emmanuel Quickley as my point guard. Gary Trent Jr. So sorry, Quentin Grimes. I had him.
How close was that, by the way? Because I have Grimes over Trent. Obviously.
It was close. It was close. I went back and forth, and I was like, do I just need more shooting? Especially now that I'm thinking I'm bringing Scottie off. And I know Quentin Grimes is an excellent shooter. I know he's an elite shooter, but I'm like, do I just need like what Gary Trent can bring? Do I just need like, oh, he went off for 40 points tonight off the bench? And I really, in my brain, I'm trying to make Gary Trent Jr. be a 6-man type. So this is my way of sort of forcing it in. But
right,
Quentin Grimes, by the numbers, was a better shooter than Gary last year. I'm pretty sure.
And better defender.
It up. Oh yeah, he's a better defender than Gary Trent Jr. Which I'm fine. I'd be fine with Quentin Grimes being in there. I'm totally fine with that. Actually, like I have zero qualms about it one way or another. And then of course my Nova guys, I have to go with Josh Hart there, and then Scottie Barnes, and then Jakob Poeltl.
The same again. Once you took out Grimes for Trent, that was basically. I was gonna say, no matter what, any top 10 I do out of this, like I did with 5 on the floor for the Boston Celtics before, and even though Josh Hart isn't like, he might be near the bottom of the 8th through 10th best player when you do this, but like you can think about taking him off. You need a glue guy like that so
I had
much.
him,
It's like
I
impossible.
think I had him in my closing lineup.
Yep, that makes sense. That is the next thing. So for the closing lineup, now that we know you have Josh Hart, which is probably taking out Julius Randle if I was to guess.
It is.
Go ahead.
I'm sorry, Julius Randle. I
Oh my
need
God.
defense. I'm so sorry, Heat fans. I mean,
So
Knicks
Tibbs
fans.
is not your coach, apparently.
Oh no.
Yeah, no, that's fair.
Oh no, it's 2023. I'm so sorry, Tibbs. My closing lineup was basically Josh Hart in for Julius Randle, but your starting lineup.
That's fair. So
Oh, actually,
Brunson,
no.
OG, Pascal.
I'm also fine with depending, because I'm a big proponent of your closing lineup should depend on the game that's being played. And I have loved Scottie at the 5 to close games. So I'm also fine with if it's needed and he's been having a good game, I'm fine with Scottie closing at the 5 there as well. And so you have just a really small team of Jalen Brunson and Josh Hart and who else is there?
OG, Pascal,
OG,
and then
Pascal, and then Scottie at the 5.
so
I'm fine
I
with that.
had almost the same exact thing as you right there. It's just like I actually didn't have I didn't have Scottie. I have
Okay, yeah.
Julius Randle playing the 4, and then I have Pascal moving up to the 5, and then because OG and Pascal are so interchangeable guarding 3, 4, or 5, have Randle follow the worst of the 3 offensive players, but still
Fair.
be an offensive threat. And then yeah, we're good to go.
Fair, yeah.
And
Yeah.
that team
I
wins
guess
56 games and loses to Giannis anyway.
Hey, the Raptors are 3-0 against Giannis. No, they're 2-0 against Giannis. Kyle's 3-0 against Giannis. I conflate that. So
that is, I mean, that's true. He helped you win a championship. He didn't help you.
Pascal has not lost. Pascal Siakam has not lost to Giannis in the playoffs outside of even the championship year. He's not lost. They've gone up against each other before.
And for any Knick fan that wanted to think or know why Pascal's better than Julius Randle, I think is like 1-8 against Giannis Antetokounmpo. So that alone makes a major difference when you go up against the best player in the league, second best player in the league.
Ooh.
Imman, you've been amazing. Thank you so very much for coming on. Feel free to plug whatever you want to plug, please.
Check out Pros and Claws. Also, I have this episode that we've been sitting on for Dishes and Dimes that we're hopefully ready to launch pretty soon. So check that out with the relaunch. And then I do host a Yahoo Sports Canada podcast weekly. So check that out as well.
You've been awesome. If I'm gonna bet the Raptors over 36.5 wins personally.
Thank you. My heart cannot take it.
I think even when they're bad, they're gonna hit 40. So I think you'll be good to go.
Either. Oh God.
I'm sorry, you're going for like the 9th seed. Let's
Damian
go.
Lillard.
Yeah, good luck with Giannis Antetokounmpo. Let's go Knicks. Peace.